You feel like the world has gone mad, but no one can explain why. Everything seems too fast, too shallow, too loud. Empty people pretending to be whole in 15-second videos, edited lives, numbed emotions, and you trapped in all that noise, unsure of where you are or who you really are. What few people know is that Carl Jung predicted this. Long before social media, selfies, and mass emotional breakdowns, he spoke of the death of the soul, the exile of the unconscious, and the silent destruction of the individual by the machinery of a collective unconscious. Jung saw it all and left behind a map, a hidden path, forgotten, ignored by most. Today, you're going to uncover that truth, and maybe you'll never be able to live the same again. Carl Jung was not just a psychologist, he was a cartographer of the human soul. While the world marveled at technological advances, industrial progress, and the rise of rationalism, Jung saw something else forming, a void, a hole at the center of the collective psyche, a growing and dangerous disconnect between the human being and what he called the self, the totality of the psyche, the spark of the real within us. The chaos of today? It wouldn't surprise Jung. In fact, he predicted it with chilling accuracy. Jung saw modern civilization moving towards spiritual amputation. As individuals bent to the demands of external progress, productivity, status, consumption, image, they moved further away from what gives life meaning. The unconscious, myths, symbols, dreams, archetypes, all that nourishes the spirit was being dismissed, labeled as irrational, superstitious, or useless. The result? A fragmented human being wearing a mask on the surface while a silent scream echoes inside. In his work, The Problem of the Modern Soul, Jung wrote, "Modern man no longer finds himself in himself, but in the distorted mirrors of the external world." He foresaw that this obsession with the external, with approval, visible success, pure logic, would lead to the rise of what he called unconscious masses. People who don't live their own lives, but instead play assigned roles. People disconnected from their own essence, dragged along by the collective current like leaves in a raging river. And here's the most unsettling part. Jung didn't see evil as something that comes from the outside. He believed humanity's greatest danger lies within, in the unacknowledged shadow, the repressed impulses, the projections we cast onto others. When a person avoids their own unconscious, they become vulnerable to manipulation, polarization, and fanaticism. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Jung's prediction was simple and brutal. A society that rejects the soul inevitably becomes sick. It starts with existential crises, chronic anxiety, epidemic depression. It evolves into a superficial culture where everyone is exposed but no one is truly seen, where everyone talks but no one listens, where we lose the thread of inner truth and with it, our sanity. To him, the real collapse of civilization wouldn't come from wars or economic crashes, but from the loss of contact with the unconscious. A civilization without symbols, without rituals, without inner listening would be a civilization in psychic ruins. And that's exactly what we're witnessing today, a hyper-connected world, inwardly orphaned. Jung didn't see the future through a crystal ball, but through clinical sensitivity and rare intuition. He understood that unless man reconnects with his soul, no external structure will endure. No ideology will save us. No technology will fill what was torn out from within. The bomb was set, and it was silent. The human mind, disconnected from its wholeness, would implode from the inside. That's what he tried to warn us about, and it's what we need to talk about now. We live in the age of images. Never before has there been so much appearance and so little identity. Never have we communicated so much and listened so little. Never have we been so visible and yet so invisible to ourselves. The modern world has become the perfect stage for what Jung called the domination of the persona. The persona, according to him, is the mask we wear to function socially. It's the character adapted to external demands. And to a degree, it's necessary. The problem begins when the individual confuses themselves with the mask and forgets who's behind it. Social media, algorithms, performance cults, all of it feeds this inflated, overgrown, smiling persona. Always available, always perfect. But behind the curtain, what grows is the shadow. What we repress, what we don't show. The frustrations, resentments, envy, fear, exhaustion, guilt. The impulse to say enough, to drop everything, to claim our truth. Jung said that whatever we don't face internally eventually returns externally, disguised as enemy, crisis, or tragedy. Today, that collective shadow is overflowing. The ideological tribalism dominating public discourse is the shadow projected at scale. People unable to deal with their own fractures project evil onto entire groups, create villains, feed hate narratives, live in thought bubbles where complexity disappears. The internet, once a promise of connection, has become a battlefield of symbolic warfare where no one listens. They only scream to confirm their own echo chamber. Jung warned that without shadow integration, humans become radical, rigid, moralistic. The more they see themselves as pure, the more unaware they become of their own darkness.
Beyond that, there's a silent phenomenon, the epidemic of anxiety and depression. More than clinical illnesses, they are deep symptoms of a starved psyche. People who don't dream, who have no living symbols, who have no meaning, can't sustain their own existence. Jung believed the soul speaks through images, metaphors, myths. When these languages vanish, only functional emptiness remains. You wake up, work, consume, post, smile, sleep, and inside, something dies a little every day. It's not ordinary sadness, it's loss of meaning. Today's culture pushes the individual outside of themselves. Everything is stimulus, acceleration, urgency. There's no time for reflection, no space for silence, no encouragement to listen to what comes from within. Jung said the unconscious must be listened to, not fought. But today the unconscious is drowned in noise, distraction, dopamine and pills and notifications. And the more we run, the more it chases us. The soul, ignored, starts to scream, and the scream comes in the form of collapse. The cruelest part is that all this is disguised as a good life. The wellness culture sold today is based on image. Self-care became a product, self-knowledge became an algorithm, and personal growth turned into a checklist. But Jung spoke of something else. He didn't promise comfort. He spoke of confrontation, not with others, but with oneself. True transformation requires entering the dark forest of the psyche, where the monsters and the treasures live. But who wants to do that today? Jung's lens on today's society is like a shattered mirror. It shows us that we are not merely victims of a chaotic system. We are co-authors of this chaos because we allowed the external to replace the internal, because we sold our souls for the approval of the masses, because we abandoned the symbol and bowed before statistics, because we traded depth for efficiency, because we stopped being whole in order to be relevant. And at this point, we begin to see the chaos surrounding us is not just social, political, or technological. It is spiritual, it is psychological, it is archetypal. It is the collapse of a human being who can no longer bear to live far from himself. And this is exactly where the next point emerges, the solution Jung left hidden, not out in the world, but within each of us.
Most people believe the world's problems can be solved with more control, more rules, more information. Jung thought differently. For him, humanity's crisis was not a lack of data, but a lack of meaning. Not an excess of chaos, but the absence of a center. And that center, according to Jung, isn't found outside. It's within, buried, ignored, forgotten. He called the process of returning to that center individuation. And this is where the rarely understood solution lies. To individuate is not to become unique in the modern sense, like an original Instagram profile. It is to become whole, to integrate the fragments of the self, to leave the surface and move towards psychic totality, toward the self. For Jung, every human being is born with the potential to become a whole individual. But to do that, one must face what lies underground, the shadow, the unconscious, repressed impulses, unlived desires, unresolved traumas, distorted archetypes. Without this, a person leads an adapted existence, functional but empty. They live as a persona. They die never having lived as a soul. Jung's solution wasn't comfortable, but it was liberating. Face the shadow, dialogue with your inner opposites, acknowledge what you don't want to see. Listen to your dreams, respect the symbols that rise from the depths. Don't rationalize everything. Not everything in you is logical, but everything in you is true. Real transformation, Jung said, happens when you stop trying to fix the world and start healing yourself. Not out of selfishness, but because a healed individual no longer feeds the destructive collective unconscious. They become presence, they become anchor, they become a point of order in the midst of chaos. This path is not linear, there's no clear map. It's more like a descent, the journey through the dark night of the soul. But paradoxically, that's where the light is found. The individuation process demands rupture. You must let go of the persona that brought you this far in order to be reborn. You must disobey external expectations. You must retreat when everyone is shouting. You must doubt yourself so that you can finally begin to truly hear yourself. The answer Jung offers doesn't fit in a tweet or a motivational quote. It's existential, it's symbolic, it requires courage, time, and silence. And the most neglected key to this journey is the reconnection with the symbol. Jung said the soul doesn't speak in rational language, but in living images. Dreams, myths, stories, archetypes, these are the languages of the self. When you ignore your dreams, mock your intuitions, or dismiss your spirituality, you're not being skeptical, you're being amputated. A vital part of you is being silenced. And the more that part is repressed, the more your life becomes a loop of unconscious repetitions. The shadow takes the wheel, anxiety settles in, and you keep going like a functional zombie without knowing why.
The true solution Jung proposes is a return, not to the past, but to the depths. A return to the center of the psyche, to the self, to the soul. It's not about abandoning the world, but inhabiting it with wholeness. Jung believed the world would only change if individuals changed, not through external imposition, but through inner revolution. And that change doesn't happen through speeches, likes, or mantras. It happens when someone chooses to dive where no one wants to go, inward. This process, when lived honestly, changes everything. You stop seeking meaning outside. You stop comparing yourself. You stop selling yourself. You begin to live with roots. You begin to see the world with different eyes. You begin to feel your life has purpose, not a pre-packaged purpose, but something that emerges from within, like a song only you can hear. And by listening to it, you become a true human being. Less perfect, more whole. Less programmed, more present. Jung didn't hand us a magic formula. He offered a path, a solitary, symbolic, profound, and irreplaceable path. And the most incredible part? This path is available to everyone, yet rarely walked, because it demands exactly what the modern world avoids: silence, listening, confrontation, truth. But that's where the soul lives. That's where healing begins. If the solution lies within, why do so few people find it? Why do most prefer to remain lost even while sensing something is wrong? Jung would answer with a simple phrase: because looking within hurts. And modern society is programmed to avoid pain at all costs. Today's world was built for distraction, not introspection.
for speed, not depth, for constant stimulation, not silence. And that is precisely what makes individuation such a rare path. The first great obstacle is the culture of performance. We live under the tyranny of productivity. Everything must be optimized, profitable, useful, measurable. Even self-knowledge has become a product with goals, methods, and metrics. But the soul doesn't work that way. It's not efficient nor linear. It moves in cycles, pauses, dives. And that goes against a world that idolizes haste. The inner journey requires stopping, and today, stopping is seen as failure. If you're not doing, posting, or improving, you're falling behind. That's the collective belief, and it destroys any chance of real inner listening. Another obstacle is the fear of internal confrontation. Jung stated that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That requires radical courage. Facing your own shadow means realizing that you are not always the victim. That part of your pain was fed by unconscious choices. That you lied to yourself, repeated family patterns, sabotaged your own freedom. This kind of truth doesn't come with a filter. It shatters illusions. And most would rather keep the polish of the persona intact than face the collapse of the ego. Technology is also a central obstacle, not because it is bad, but because it acts as armor against the void. Smartphones, social media, notifications, endless videos, all of it is designed to keep your attention outside of yourself. Every screen tap is a step away from silence. And in silence, the soul begins to speak. But if you never listen, you'll never understand what it's trying to say. The most tragic part is that many confuse information with wisdom. They read Jung quotes, share sound bites, but live none of it. Because the real dive requires solitude, pause, confrontation with what's behind the screen. There's also a deep cultural conditioning to avoid the symbolic. We live in an era dominated by technical reason. If it can't be proven, it doesn't matter. If it can't be sold, it's useless. This mindset has reduced the soul to a weak metaphor. But for Jung, the soul was real, and its language was symbol. Today, people think symbols are esoteric nonsense. They ignore dreams, dismiss myths, ridicule the sacred. But what they don't realize is that by doing so, they are silencing the very channel through which the unconscious tries to express itself. And when the unconscious isn't heard, it doesn't go away. It retaliates, with symptoms, with crises, with destructive repetitions. Finally, there's the existential isolation disguised as connectivity. We have 1,000 ways to stay in touch and almost none to truly be present. Inner loneliness has never been so intense. And individuation is a process that at some point demands solitude. Not loneliness, but separation from the collective noise. It requires a symbolic break from the crowd. And this may be the greatest challenge of all, letting go of the need for acceptance. The fear of being excluded, of not being validated, of seeming weird or too deep paralyzes most. They'd rather keep belonging to the unconscious collective than bear the weight of their own freedom. Jung said that individuation is not a luxury, it's a necessity. That the world will never be healed by ideologies or systems, but by awakened individuals. But awakening has a price. You must strip away everything that is not you. You must die to the persona. You must dive where no one wants to look. And that's frightening. That hurts, but it is the only real path. That's why, even with the solution in plain sight, many don't live it. Because to live this truth requires something the modern world doesn't teach: presence, courage, silence, and surrender. Those who can embody this stop being merely part of the problem and become a lucid presence in the storm. Consciousness in the midst of chaos, the awakened human within the machine. Carl Jung was never interested in easy formulas. He didn't want you to become more productive or more positive. He wanted you to become whole, to have the courage to stop running, to face the world's chaos not as an external enemy, but as the reflection of the chaos you still carry within. He warned us, the greatest danger to humanity is not the bomb, nor economic collapse, nor politics. It is the individual who does not know themselves, who lives through masks, who adapts so much to the external that they lose their own center. Because that person is easily manipulated. They hate without knowing why. They follow without knowing what they're following. They consume, judge, cancel, destroy, all in the name of a shadow they never had the courage to face. The solution Jung proposed is not about changing the world. It's about changing yourself deeply. Not with ready-made quotes or 21-day plans, but through real confrontation with your shadow, your dreams, your untold story, with the part of you that you abandoned in order to fit in. And you can begin now. You don't need answers. You need silence, listening, presence. Ask yourself, who am I beyond the persona I built? What in me has been suffocated? What symbols has the unconscious been trying to show me for years that I keep ignoring? The answers won't come quickly, but they will come. And when they do, everything will change. Jung didn't leave us a manual. He left us a mirror, a calling, a crossing. And that crossing, no one can make it for you. You can keep distracting yourself. You can keep performing. You can keep seeking solutions outside. Or you can choose today to do something most will never do. Descend to where the soul lives and come back whole. The decision is yours. The path is solitary. But on the other side, for the first time, you will meet yourself.